Welcome to the WellPlayed DLC podcast episode 2. It is Tuesday, May 14th, and I'm Zach, your host, here with Kieron,
Hey,
Jordan,
Hey there.
and Ash.
Yo.
How we doing, guys?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my daughter's teething, so it's alright.
Oh, that's always a fun time.
That's amazing. It's a brilliant time.
Jordan, you?
I've been pretty good. Excited to get back into this podcast.
And Mr. Kieron, how are you, my sir?
I'm doing alright. I'm slightly less sick than last time.
That's always a plus.
Yeah.
So what have we been playing, boys?
Well, I've been playing Breath of the Wild, like I said I would be.
Very exciting.
Just
Just as exciting as last time?
just as exciting as last time. I've been having a blast with it, actually. I've been
How many hours you
approaching
put
it
into it,
very
Jordan?
differently. What was that?
How many hours you put in?
Too many. Probably 50, 60.
Nice.
Speaking of too many hours doing something, I need to stop playing Mortal Kombat 11.
Have we actually unlocked anything yet?
I've unlocked so much stuff. Since they patched it, you can actually unlock things. I'm actually at this point where I'm worried that I'm unlocking things too quickly and I'm going to burn out on content.
Have you unlocked Noob Cybot yet? Or did we discuss that last week?
Yeah, no, he's available from the word go.
Huh.
Yeah, no, he's in there. He's a mega edgelord.
Nice. Kieron, you?
I started Rage 2 today actually.
Oh, very nice.
Oh, how is it?
It's good. It's good. It's pretty much what I was expecting, which is open world Doom.
I was going to say that's not a bad thing, really. I mean, when
No.
you take into account that the two studios working on it pretty much equate to open world Doom, not a bad
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
I know that we got our review code yesterday, and Kieran's played a few hours. Different Kieran,
Daddy Kieran.
Daddy Kieran,
Too many Kieran.
and he said to me this afternoon, because I said, "I don't know, what do you think?" Because I thought I could just use it in here. He goes, "It's a bit like Doom, it's a bit like Just Cause, and a bit like Borderlands." I think is what he said.
Yeah,
all
that's
sort of
pretty accurate.
Mixed together.
I mean, that's three things that I don't mind. So
But so I think he said he's not sure. I don't think he's played enough yet to obviously make a decision. But he said it feels like it's not sure of what it wants to be yet.
Yeah,
okay,
I can
Let's-
get behind that. I put maybe like 5-ish hours into it so far, and it's it's pretty much like it feels a little bit derivative and like a little bit like it doesn't have its own kind of identity, but it's like the shooting mechanics are solid as hell. Like it's a lot of fun.
And you've have you unlocked? Is the wing stick unlocked from the start, or?
Yeah, that's like pretty much
Nice,
one of the first
nice.
things you get. That's like one of the coolest weapons in a shooter in a long time because it gives you something to do while you're reloading the actual weapons.
I've actually.
it was great in
That's
Rage
like-
1 too. I really like the wing stick in Rage 1.
Yeah.
I've not played Rage 1. I've watched my brother play it, but I didn't play it. So,
Actually, funny story. Do you know the only reason why I played Rage 1?
your brother told you to buy it?
No.
Ah.
Remember how in Dick Smith was shutting down, they sold like games for like 99 cents?
Yeah, that was eight.
I
That
went
was
to my local,
Hmm.
my local Dick Smith. Like the only game there that had any interest to me whatsoever was like Rage for 99 cents.
nice. Pretty good buy for $1.
Oh yeah, for $1 you can't really go wrong. I'm pretty sure all the other game choices for $1 were absolutely horrible to the point where even $1 was too much.
Like trolling her.
Was that on 360, Ash?
Yeah, sure was.
Do I remember correctly that there was like one disc for the main game and then another disc just for like car combat?
There was like 3 discs. There was an install disc, a play disc, and
Ah.
then there was an additional disc. Yeah, so that 99 cents went very far as like cost per
But-
CD square meter.
Yeah.
That's because Xbox didn't use Blu-rays then.
No, it's DVDs.
They tried to hitch their wagon to the HD DVD train and it didn't take off.
Oh yuck. Me, I've been playing. I actually had a bit of a.
Nobody
I
asked
know,
you.
but I thought we'd just move on.
You're still playing Days Gone though, right?
I haven't played it this week or since we last spoke. Actually, that's a lie. I did play like an hour, I think, that night. But yeah, since
Riveting stuff.
it's come out, I have not had a chance to touch it. Been busy, as you know, with A Plague Tale, Innocence, that came out today. The review went live this morning, and it's awesome. it's probably up there in the top 2 games that I've played this year, easily.
So what score would you give it?
Out of
Solid
like
four?
3 games?
Yeah, I've only played 3 games. I gave it 9 out of 10. There was one thing which we'll discuss that sort of brought it down just a bit. But yeah, man, it's awesome. If you like story games that are basically centered around telling a story, then, and if you like historical settings, then this is definitely for you, because as we know, historical settings get my jorts real tight. So yeah, it's basically, if you don't know what it's about, it's set in the sort of mid 14th century, 1348 from memory.
So, just quickly, what identifies the 14th century? Is it like Victorian or like earlier?
No, it'd be
Plague.
like Middle Ages, I guess.
Oh, hot damn! Okay.
Yeah. Victorian's like late 18 or in the 1800s.
Oh wow, yeah. No, see, I know nothing about this game, so like that's
Yeah, so it's set super early. Oh yeah, so but 1348 in as what's called the Kingdom of France. Then, not just France. And it's obviously that is the time when the Black Plague was breaking out across Europe and Eurasia and killing basically everybody in sight. I think big old Google told me it killed between 75 and 200 million people over the course of like 4 years. So it was pretty devastating. And yeah, so it's sort of set during then, and you play as Amicia de Rune and her brother Hugo. So you play as the sister, and basically so it's set during the Black Plague, but also the French Inquisition are hunting the younger boy because he's sick, but not with the plague. They're not, like, you're not sure what he's actually sick with, but you know that he's been sort of locked away from society while his mother tries to cure him or whatever. And basically the game starts off and you have to basically flee the family home, and you and your brother, or Amicia and Hugo, flee the family home and basically have to survive, and she has to find a cure or what's wrong with Hugo, all while trying to evade thousands and thousands of rats and they just want to chomp into you, and also the French Inquisition. It's very linear, so there's no like open world, there's no straying off and finding a different route to sort of do something. It's all sort of one way. It feels almost very cinematic in the way that it's told. The gameplay is fairly limited but still sort of complex. So you have Amicia's main tool or weapon is this sling, and you find rocks, and which you can use the rocks to distract guards, or you can use it to unlock so there might be like a big box or something that you have to break that's being held up by like a hoist. So you break the hoist and it the box drops down and you can jump over a ledge or something like that. And then you can also kill the guards with the rocks with the sling.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and as you sort of progress, your Amicia meets these other sort of people in the world, and they all have sort of different skills and talents that you can use. And one of the first ones that you meet, the other person, is an alchemist. So he teaches Amicia skills like, and one's called Ignifier, which means that you can. So there'll be so with the rats, right? The rats are basically allergic to light and fire, and if they can't go into those areas. So if you're protected by any form of light, whether it's a fire or a whatever, or like daylight, then you won't get eaten. So there are torches and like fire pits that you can light along the way, so that you can basically clear a safe path. And the other skills are things. Yeah, I won't sort of.
So wait, is this the game that like touted it has like incredible like rat stuff?
Yeah, so they're at.
I remember reading about this. It sounded really cool.
At well, the developers said that up to one time they can fit 5,000 rats on the screen, and there's a couple sequences where there's just an absolute shitload of rats, and it's not super intimidating, but if you have like a sort of a semi-fear of rodents or something like that, then it's going to make you feel a bit uneasy.
Tell me, like, roughly how many is a shitload?
Oh, they're everywhere.
Is it a sea of rats?
Yeah, it is literally a sea of rats. There's a scene sort of quite early on, and it's also super easy to get eaten by them too. Like, it's not like they're, because there are like sticks and stuff that you can get sort of in areas, and you can light it. So you might have to travel, let's say, 20 meters to light another fire pit, right? And you get a stick, light it, and you got to, because you're with Hugo like the whole time, you're covering him or holding his hand or whatever. You walk quite slowly, so there are times where if you don't if you knock something or sort of get stuck for a second, your torch will burn out, and basically as soon as it burns out, the rats just swarm you and eat you and Hugo.
It's like they sort of like envelop you, but like a tide, and just
pretty
sort of
much
launch you away.
And the world it's incredible. It's incredibly detailed. It's super authentic. Like, if I felt like I just time traveled back to like the 14th century. It looks
sounds like immersion at its finest.
Yeah, and it's just like the best part about it is just the acting, like the voice acting and the writing is just awesome. It sells the whole tale. It feels very much like, and this is what I wrote, sort of like Joel and Ellie in the Last of Us, and like Kratos and Atreus, just that sort of bond. And as you sort of overcome these obstacles, the bond sort of gets a lot stronger. And the best part about the sort of like the writing is how genuine like they seem as kids, because Hugo's only 5 years old, so he's never been exposed to like the outside world, especially like this. So there are things that he will do or say, even just the way that he says stuff, like the way he'll say, so he'll go off and Amicia will be like, oh, Hugo, you can't like run off, and he'll be like, oh, sorry, just like the way it's real, like genuine, and it feels like, I know that the game director did tell me that the voice actors who are kids, they gave their own sort of input on sort of what they would say or would sort of do here, like in certain sections, and or there'll be times where he'll want to light a candle, and he'll ask for permission, and he'll say thank you, and it's just like those little things that that sell that he's a kid. But one of the best things that he does is whenever because you're holding Amicia's holding Hugo's hand like the entire time pretty much, and if he runs off, which he often does, he'll run back and grab her hand as if he's scared and needs to be comforted and stuff. And it's just it's very, very real, and it's just awesome.
So from what you've played so far, do you feel like the game's going to basically crush your spirit towards the end of it and you'll just be left weeping?
Look, I don't want to reveal too much about the story because it's, I think you should experience it for yourself.
You've said that it's set during the plague and you've got like the French Inquisition and you're walking around with two children. It's like, cool. Sounds like every ingredient in a recipe for just tragedy.
Yeah, well, I mean, the world itself sort of does that for you, and this is sort of our next topic that one of our topics we're going to talk about is just death in video games, and it's one thing to sort of experience death like in like a first-person shooter, like a war game and that sort of thing, but this was like a whole nother experience, a whole nother insight to just how brutal like it is, and like the world is brutal. It is grim. There are like bodies everywhere, whether it's animals or people. Like there are fields that are just lined, like their bodies everywhere and there's still rats. Like rats are everywhere trying to chomp into anything it can find. There is like, you go through one field and there's like a mountain of like dead animals just all there, and Hugo gets like in those sort of moments, like here, he gets quite sad, and again that sort of sells that whole authenticity of them being children. But yeah, just the way that death is it's brutal. Like it is, and there are things that you have to do in the game which are just like kids should never ever have to do things like that. So things like killing guards. It really is like survival of the fittest. Because if you don't do this, then Hugo doesn't get his cure, and you die pretty much.
It's rough.
Yeah, there's a couple of scenes where you're like, oh, like, do I really have to do this? Like, I don't really want to do that. And you think about it, if you were in that actual situation sort of, and you go, fuck, like, what would you do?
Is it posed as a choice, however?
No, you have to do it.
Oh.
No, like it's
Deal with it, son.
yeah, because it's very linear. There's no sort of choice. It's all and that's part of the story and like the world building and why it feels so grim and dark, and it's just very well written and designed, and it also looks beautiful as well, even though there's bodies and death everywhere. But yeah, if you guys, I think Kieron, you said you bought it. You should definitely.
Yeah.
I'd be keen to hear what you think, and I don't know. Yeah.
I actually just thought a bit of a content we could do for the website at some point, because funnily enough, I had a call. Well, we had a call from our building manager today to say that we're sending some people around on Friday because there's been reports of rat sightings in the apartment building
Nice.
today of all days. So what I might do is I might start playing it then, and I'll show it to the exterminators, and they can tell me if it's realistic or not.
True. Do it.
Yeah, and if you contract the plague, then you can do an article for the website about it.
Well,
yeah.
people have. Did you hear that the people died? Excuse me, recently from the plague.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Two
There are
people
deaths
they
every year
ate
for the
a.
plague.
What did they eat, Jordan? A monkey something, didn't they? Something monkey.
Not entirely sure.
I need to Google that.
And the monkey was an
Bubonic
anti-vaxxer.
plague?
Yeah.
Good God.
It's still around. I think like a few years ago there was a stat like every year about 5 to 10 people in America die from it or something.
In America.
Yeah.
Good God.
Yeah, here we are.
Stop eating monkeys, people.
6th of May. 6th of May 2019. Quarantine lifted after couple die of bubonic plague. So the same same thing.
I bet I was
Quarantine
watching the live-action Sonic trailer.
Quarantine imposed in Mongolia after 2 people died from the came talk. Bubonic plague has been lifted. Where is it? Here we are. The Mongolian couple contracted the illness after eating the raw meat of a marmot, a type of rodent. So it wasn't a monkey at all.
It was a rodent.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, cool.
which
Can't trust those rodents.
is either very very guerrilla type marketing done by the devs there, or it's just
That's some next level
or
stuff.
it's just incredible timing.
But Bethesda could learn a thing or two from that marketing.
But yeah, it really is just an awesome game. It is just an awesome game, and that's, I mean, it is the type of game that sort of ticks all my boxes. So yeah, it was awesome, and if you get a chance to play, you should definitely do it.
No, I'm interested. I do like a good narrative game. If it's just, I mean, linear games have their own issues with being linear, but at the same time, if it's a story being told and it's a good story, then following that path is rewarding. So.
Yeah, actually, I will just say, yeah. So the one thing that really that brought it down just a bit, was how easy it is and how dumb the enemy AI is.
Really?
Like there were times where, you'd be standing so they'd be facing one way, right, for example, and you'd be standing, on basically right next to their side, and they wouldn't see you.
Do you think it's a dig at the French?
No. And there was another time where, if you get caught, right, they come over and go, oh, I think I saw something, and they come over, and you're sort of in like an L-shaped, like with like 2 sort of walls that you can sort of vault over, right, but like in like an L shape. So I vaulted over one, and then vaulted over like the next one, and he was like, oh, where'd they go? And it's like, mate, like, you're literally right there. You saw me vault over the wall. Like
That just reminds you of like old school Splinter Cell AI.
um
Oh, my friend's got a bullet hole in his head. Must have been nothing.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, honestly there has to be like a list of the best stupid AI reactions in stealth or just hidden sections. Like Tenchu was a great one for what was that? Must have been a cat.
I mean, yeah, it didn't fully break the immersion because it's you don't want a game like that to be too hard because otherwise you sort of start to not enjoy the story. But there were a couple times where I was like, oh, this is sort of a bit ridiculous. But yeah,
like come on.
Apart from that, it's awesome.
Nice.
As I've said like 8 times now.
So is it awesome?
Let me just double check. Yes, it is awesome.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. It is indeed awesome.
Kieron, you've been playing Life is Strange episode 3. Sorry, Life is Strange 2 episode 3. Well, give us some quick thoughts on that.
Well, it's hard to say too much without kind of spoiling the story because it's like 3 episodes.
Well, how about for somebody who's never encountered any kind of Life is Strange media?
Yeah.
In a nutshell,
it's like if Telltale made good games.
Oh,
okay. Well,
It's
I mean,
funny
Telltale
you-
doesn't make games anymore.
It's
so
funny you
But
say
anyway,
that
moving
though. It's funny you say that, Kieran, because I have always tried to like the Telltale games, never could. I picked up Life is Strange for free one day, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah, but I mean, like
Right, so
there's
what you're saying
definitely
is I should finish my Telltale games before I play it.
there's
Yes.
definitely there's a lot of good Telltale series, but no, like Life is Strange. Everything that sort of Telltale set out to achieve with their stuff, like these guys have been doing it way better. Like just in terms of like the narrative and like the dialogue choices, and like especially visually. Like I don't know if anyone's seen much, like if any of you have seen much gameplay from Life is Strange. You've played it, haven't you, Zach?
I've played the first 2 episodes of the first one.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
I love the art.
Yeah. Like the Life is Strange 2, so the new series in particular is a beautiful, beautiful game. Like it flies in the face of everything sort of Telltale used to try and get away with, like cutting corners on animation and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good in that regard. And yeah, like the new series story is awesome. The characters are awesome. It's kind of like what you were saying, Zach, about the characters in Plague Tale being kids and like their dialogue and their writing being a lot more real than what we usually get. And I think that's the same. It's the same for Life is Strange 2, because again, they've got like a couple of like the 2 boys in the game are voice acted by 2 boys like pretty much the same ages in real life. So I think they sort of get a lot of input and a lot of feedback from them, because it's supernatural and like supernatural and also supernatural in the story. So that's cool. But yeah, it's like there's so many moments in it where like with dialogue between the 2 brothers where I'm like, that's literally being a 15-year-old kid and having an 8-year-old brother. Like that's 100% accurate. So that's like, it's way more natural than anything that I've sort of played in an episodic game before, which is really cool.
Do you enjoy it more than than number 1?
Yeah. Life is like the first series of Life is Strange and like Before the Storm were awesome as well, but definitely like, because Don't Nod are a French team, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And like the writing and a lot of the dialogue in the first series was, you could kind of tell that it was being written by people who necessarily didn't speak English as a first language. Like obviously they had English speaking writers and stuff as well, but it was just like a little bit awkward and a little bit stilted. But like this new series is like just on point.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm keen to check it out, but I've got to finish the first one first. And I've still got Before the Storm, and it's the one that Bandai sent me. Shout out to Bandai if you listen. It's still sealed as well.
Before the Storm broke my heart, so just careful.
Yeah, and yeah, Don't Nod are awesome developers. I reckon they're actually one of my favorites, and
Yeah, they're pretty sick.
even though it sort of got a bit panned a little bit, but I think Remember Me is one of my favorite games in terms of like the world and even like the female character. Like she's one of my favorite female characters from a game. I love
really
to see
like
a
to
second
Remember
one.
Me.
Yeah, because the rewind mechanic sort of came from that's in Life is Strange sort of came from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I remember originally they couldn't get Remember Me greenlit because no studio wanted a female lead or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's exactly it.
I remember that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's move on. We'll go back. We'll just jump back to that other topic we were talking about before, just about death in video games. And this is something that has been written about quite recently, and also something that I thought about while I was playing A Plague Tale, and is that have we, I guess, as a community or whatever society, become a bit desensitized? I said that weird to death in video games.
Well, I think that like what you were just saying about A Plague Tale and how you like there were moments where you were like, oh shit, I don't know if I want to do this. I think that kind of proves that you probably haven't been super desensitized to that kind of stuff, because it's contextual. Like in that context, you know what you're doing feels wrong. Whereas like I've been playing Rage recently, and like you're chopping dudes' heads off and blowing dudes up like willy-nilly, but the context of that game is it's over the top, and so I don't feel bad about it. Like I would if I was playing that.
I'm playing, Mortal Kombat 11, and I'm punching dudes in the balls so hard that their skull like pops out of their head. So
yeah, I think the important thing in Mortal Kombat is after you've done that, they just get up and keep fighting as well. So like, there's a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah.
Is it?
But it's all about context, and like I think like you said in A Plague Tale, it sounds like it's been very well communicated. That sort of this isn't a wildly exciting, fun thing that's happening. There's real emotion going into it. So.
Well, do you think it's purely because they're children, and this is, I mean, I know that you haven't played it, but in the A Plague Tale context, do you think that it has more impact because they're kids, and that
I think it's hard to ignore that that's a massive factor. Like, I mean, if you play, I don't know, you mentioned that A Plague Tale is a bit like God of War in the sense that sort of it's that kind of situation where like you're interacting with the world. You've got Kratos, who is a bringer of death and destruction, who's very nonchalant about, the murdering of things throughout his journey. And, even Atreus in that case is sort of a little bit desensitized because his father's imposing that to him. So, I kind of feel like A Plague Tale in that case, if you're much more of a nurturing character, then, will you tell me, does the play character sort of go, that's not good, that's a sad thing, do you say, like, for example, don't look kids or anything like that?
I don't want to spoil it, because it's like those scenes that you got to do stuff. It's all those sequences are very well done because they make you feel that way. There are. So Hugo reacts to them in a way that you go like, mate, like I didn't have a choice. Like, what do you want from me? Like, do you want to die or do you want to stay alive, mate?
Do you at least get a press X to comfort button?
No, but you can actually.
That's all I wanted in God of War, and I never got it.
While we're on this topic, sort of, you can pat dogs and pat horses in A Plague Tale. Just
Good.
10 out of 10.
But yeah, no, because I was thinking about how much in like first person shooters and stuff, and like you were saying, Kieron, with Rage, but we just murder countless people, and it sort of just feels like, even like with films, like you watch, like you go and watch John Wick, and it's like headshot, and that's that's the sort of game that it is, but it's still like, I don't know, it's he's just racked up.
It's still
15.
a very casual ending of human life, like continuously throughout the film.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where you get confronted with something where you're not like a soldier, and you're not on like a warpath to revenge or kill somebody, and it just feels a whole lot different. I don't know. It was just an interesting thought, because Kotaku published an article last week or this week.
Is this the Mortal Kombat one?
Yeah, about how the
Fascinating.
Developers, or one of the developers that spoke to Kotaku, has been having extremely graphic dreams about death and stuff.
Actually been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder from effectively the work that they put into crafting fatalities in the game Mortal Kombat 11. And it was quite interesting when they described the conditions based around sort of that, I guess, that factory of death, as it were, is that obviously we as consumers, the people that play these games, I mean, our experience with these graphic depictions of death, violence, it's fleeting, it's quick, the fatality's over in 10 seconds, and then you move on. But these people worked for weeks, months, absolutely massive periods of time trying to create this incredibly realistic depiction of death. And then you take into account, from a craftsman's perspective, the kind of resources they need to dip into. They need to ask these questions of what happens when you sever a person's skull and can see their brain. What does that look like? How does the blood come out? And then the way they described it, the reference materials people were looking at, it was actually intensively eye-opening for me, because I sort of gloss over the whole, violence in games, it's a thing, it happens, move on. I didn't realize that people like that were in that position, and actually my heart goes out to them, because it does sound like really quite worrying.
Yeah, well, one of the guy, or the article says that that they'd be in the office and a guy be watching a video of people getting hung on like YouTube, and then another one would be looking at like murder scenes or whatever, and that was just par for the course. That's just how it was done.
There was actually a comment offered by somebody who worked on the original Dead Space games, mentioning that during their time working on the game, they actually had a shared folder throughout all of the art department that was effectively called Extremely Graphic, Do Not Open Unless You Need to.
Oof.
And inside that was crime scenes of like very graphic murders and things like that, just because they really wanted to sort of capture that incredibly sort of horrible, organic material. They really wanted to paint that horrible sort of blood-spattered picture of it. But the way that they approached it was like, it was there as a reference for the people who needed it, but, it was very clearly labelled as the rabbit hole that don't go down unless you need to.
Yeah, and another topic or another point of discussion that I've heard is that is it easier to deal with death in video games because we're doing it, as weird as that sounds, as opposed to viewing it without, interacting with it, if that sort of makes sense?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's that point. I think it's because it's an entertainment medium that's interactive like video games. You kind of have that disassociation with it, so you feel like you're not really at fault for what's happening. It's kind of something that's scripted to happen, and no one's actually being hurt by it.
Yeah, I think like there is kind of something to that, Zach, like the idea that it might be easier to see death in a game, or actually be responsible for death in a game, because the whole basis of games mostly being about violence is that it's an easy way to give people stakes and a win-lose situation. So if you're a passive viewer of violence, you're not in a win-lose situation. You're watching someone lose in like either way. But in a game, like if you don't do the violence, then you lose. So maybe there's like, a sort of a connection between like having those stakes there and the need to be violent, maybe mitigating the feeling of having done it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I guess it's sort of, it's the difference between doing the fatality on Mortal Kombat 11 as opposed to creating it and watching it like 150 times in a day or whatever. Yeah,
that would be.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. But yeah, we'll move on to something else. State of Play 2 last Friday happened. What do we all think?
It was the best Nintendo Direct this year.
Mate, you're on fire.
Yeah, I was actually quite surprised, to be honest. My little tidbit from it was I'm happy to see that there is even as the track record shows that asymmetrical multiplayer games do not do well,
Weren't we just
there's
talking
going to
about
be a
Evolve
Predator
last week?
asymmetrical multiplayer
Oh
game.
yeah, I remember that. I saw that was the thing, and because I actually didn't get to see all of it live, but yeah, I remember reading that, and I never chased it up. So what actually is it?
Well, there's very little shown off about it at the moment, but for the most part, it is an asymmetrical multiplayer game where one person plays the Predator and the other 4 people appear to just be regular, jungle-going GI dudes. None of them are buff like Arnie. Honestly,
So it's
I don't know if
Evolve
anybody
2,
has
pretty
played.
much.
Yeah, if anybody's here has played, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands,
Yep.
that has a mission where you fight the Predator, and it looks a
It
bit
is
like
such
that.
bullshit.
Maybe better.
That is such a bullshit mission.
It is. It is such a ridiculous mission. My friends and I did it, and we went, well, that was arguably enjoyable, but yeah, but asymmetric multiplayer games apparently still exist.
I think like everyone probably felt the same way as I did when I saw that trailer and the state of play. I was like, oh, that looks really cool. That's gonna last 2 weeks.
Yeah, because again, and this is an open query. I've said it to my friends. I'll ask you guys because obviously you're not my friends based off that comment from me. But either way, you have given a choice. You can either play generic army man or super strong space alien with mandible face and laser shoulder. Who do you want to play?
I want to play as a soldier.
Yeah, you also want to play as a troll. Anyone else? But yeah, I think that's the problem with asymmetric multiplayer games, is that there's always just, the dude who gets to play the super dude is usually the more attractive option, so as long as I can design around that, I reckon it'll be okay.
But you also, I think you were telling me that you rated the new Monster Hunter World trailer thingy? The DLC,
Iceborne.
sorry?
Oh,
Yeah, so I mean, it's not just an expansion. It's not just an update. It's actually a proper expansion because I suppose there's a cash price on this one, but
yeah, there is.
think of it pretty massive.
Think of it more like you know how with all the previous Monster Hunter games they have the base version and then they have Ultimate.
Yeah,
think of it kind of like that.
Ultimate / G rank mode.
Yeah, it's not specifically G rank, but it's supposed to be like a higher rank.
I don't think we're getting G rank in World, but yeah, this is effectively that. And yeah, we got some old friends returning. I mean, they're still teasing out the whole idea of the monster tiger X being in the game, but there's a giant monster moose, boys.
All I can say is, why the fuck are Capcom making PC players wait extra for content?
Because every other game that's a multi-plat and has a PC release, the PC release usually eats the biggest pile of dog shit.
No, Destiny does it fine. The Division's fine.
I'll agree the weight's excessive, but I'd rather have a PC version that works compared to, like,
Batman.
Arkham Knight.
Yeah.
Well, no, because the thing is, though, is adding new content doesn't really need that same level of polish as actually bringing the whole game to PC.
Yeah, valid.
The engine and the whole game, it runs fine. It's actually in a really good state now compared to what it was when I reviewed it on PC. So the whole reason for, having a delayed release schedule for PC just makes no sense now, especially when you factor in the point that they've when it comes to all the timed events for Monster Hunter World, PC has been on an accelerated schedule to slowly catch up towards the consoles, and now that they're getting close to it, they're bringing them back down.
Do you think it's Japan's just not big into PC gaming?
Well, I mean, you could say that, but then Japan's not big into Xbox either. I think, like, in the first month of Monster Hunter World being out in Japan, and then like 400 people had it on Xbox because they didn't even sell Xbox copies in Japan. It was something like that.
Slightly.
That means that everyone who has an Xbox in Japan bought 2 copies. I don't believe that.
Yeah, it also means that every time you play online, you recognize literally everybody else.
Pretty
You're like, hey, Jeff.
As on topic but off topic question, do you think that Japan is their main target audience?
For Monster Hunter?
As in, big console
if it's
games?
on paper, I was going to say, if console games, I was going to say it's kind of weird because there's too many variables. If you're talking about Capcom and Monster Hunter in general, Monster Hunter World was their push into the West.
Because Monster Hunter started as a PS2 game from memory, I believe. So someone might want to Google fact check me on that.
I mean, we can fact check it, but I mean, the bottom line is it was a huge console-based title in Japan and all the rest of it. But Monster Hunter World was built from the ground up to sort of go, hey, let's make it more attractive to Western gamers as well.
Because it was, and this is where I have no idea really about it, but it was like a 3DS game, yeah.
Yes,
it was also a 3DS game.
Yeah, and that's obviously big. Like that's bigger in those sorts of.
Handhelds are massive in Japan.
So, do you think that's perhaps why consoles are favoured over PC?
I think it's the slow adoption of Capcom to PC in general.
Yeah, and the weird thing is Capcom have this really weird record with PC recently because Monster Hunter was fairly average on PC, but it became really good. Like, if you loaded that up on a PC now, it is so much better than what it used to be. Resident Evil 2, that is a phenomenal PC version.
Did that launch at the same time?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
And then you go to Devil May Cry 5, which sucks on PC.
Which is weird because that's the same. Is it the same? That's the same engine. That's,
exact same
RE
engine as
yeah.
RE2 and RE7.
No, actually,
how does that happen?
I think? Oh, no, I feel like I'm making this up, but I feel like I read somewhere that they had trouble. Devil May Cry had trouble with the RE engine initially. I could be making that up. Actually, I probably am making that up.
Stop making things up.
Yeah, sorry. Well, this whole podcast is fake.
It is fake. Yeah, none of this actually happened, everybody.
But yeah, it's
What else
just
was
little
Sam play, though?
things.
Well,
It was medieval,
Is
wasn't it?
the sugar glider
Yeah,
game?
I was about to bring.
Oh my god!
Away.
Yeah,
It looks dope.
I had somebody describe that to me, and I didn't know if they were lying or not.
So what?
It looks like
Yeah, like
Sorry.
what actually is it? Sorry.
it like from the trailer and from like with the information they posted. It's basically just like a survival slash like narrative kind of game. So you're trying to make your way from point A to point B as like a sugar glider and surviving in like all these natural disasters and stuff. But it's called Away, and then like the subtitle is a survival series. So I feel like maybe like this is one of like a number of games based on like maybe different animals.
What
Where
would
it's
you
like, yeah.
want to play as? If you could pick another animal to play as, what would it be?
A blue-footed booby.
I have no idea what that is.
It's a 3-footed movie, obviously.
I'm gonna Google
It's
it.
yeah. I don't know. Like we need
Three-toed
more
sloth.
games with animals as main characters in general.
What a
Like it's
strange
awesome.
thing
It's
to
dope.
pick.
Okami too. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly.
That does still exist.
Yeah, Medieval. What do we think of that? Were we all stoked at the
I'm
release date?
keen.
You heard it
I
first.
was very surprised by the fact that they showed that it runs like crap.
Yeah, it looks.
Yeah, no. It wasn't just me then. The actual
No.
trailer looked like it was hitching and jagging
Yes.
and yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's,
it doesn't look as good as I was like, not just the performance wise, but like
Visually?
considering that it's being rebuilt from the ground up, it still looks like it plays like a PS1 game, which like obviously it's
Not
going to be
flattering.
like faithful to a point, but like not too much.
Yeah, so
See, the thing that
Like you
I'm
built it from the ground up. to
For
look
the
like
thing,
PS1.
the thing that I'm worried about with it is, so they remade Medieval 1 and 2 for the PSP or PS Vita, whatever it was.
Those were terrible too.
And they sucked. And you know, they looked nice, but they kind of removed what made Medieval as charming as it was. And it was just the fact that it was such a dissonance between, you know, it had this playful kind of tone, and then when you actually looked at it, you go, wait, this is a really dark game, you know? And then they had these characters that had, you know, these really quirky lines and, you know, really interesting writing, and they kind of just threw it all away. And I'm worried that they're going to do the same thing for, you know, this remake of Medieval 1.
do you know who's making it?
I hope they don't, but although the one thing that does kind of worry me, and it's something that a lot of these remakes that have been coming out are kind of fallen victim to, it's the colors in the games being washed out. It was one of my biggest issues with the Spyro Reignited trilogy. I love Spyro, but because some of the colors are washed out, and even because they did some other things to the grass and everything, it kind of made the whole collectathon part of Spyro a bit more monotonous, because, you know, that whole washed out color vibe made it so gems didn't pop as easily, so you couldn't see them from a further distance. It's little things like that that you kind of don't you don't really appreciate until you realize that a remake can do it wrong.
That's interesting. See, I didn't even know they remade them for the PS Vita, but if it was
right.
that terrible, maybe I just blocked it out of my mind.
So this one's being developed by Other Ocean Emeryville, who I've never heard of.
What else have they done?
They
Anything?
don't even have a
They
Wikipedia
they
page.
did the Rick and Morty VR game.
Oh, really? They don't actually have a Wikipedia page for me to look at.
Just to clarify, you need a high IQ for that Rick and Morty VR game.
About to say, yeah. To be fair, you need a pretty high IQ to
Hang
understand.
on, I'm looking at. Oh no, yeah, they did, and apparently they developed that Simpsons mobile game.
What?
Tapped out.
Wow.
So they got good
It's-
good
Good track record.
Great references there,
good
boys.
pedigree.
Excellent. Good stuff.
But it's not gonna be super expensive though. I think they've said that.
It's like
It's
$40.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I'm pretty keen for it. I'm keen to replay it. I haven't played it since many years. I've still got it, but yeah, I've not played it for a long time. So I'm keen to get back into it. It doesn't look as good as I was hoping, but no, I'm still keen enough.
Yeah, still a
I
bit of
think
polish.
I think the most important thing to come out of State of Play is the fact that they've finally started developing the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Oh yeah,
No. They started developing the other
Again.
trailers.
but they confirmed it would be. I'm not sure if they confirmed it during the.
They said they're showing more at E3. I reckon it seems like it's going to be playable there maybe.
No, I
which
mean
would be
sorry.
cool.
They
Yeah.
I read that they confirmed it
still
was still going to be episode games. which is
How do we feel about that? To be honest,
depends on the game.
it means they can get it out in some shape. Because
just an open query to everyone here: has anyone played an episodic game when the episodes were slowly coming out and enjoyed that feeling?
No, it's horrible. I'm waiting 3 months per episode for Life is Strange 2 at the moment. I can't imagine waiting another 3 years for the next part of Final Fantasy VII Remake.
For me, every episodic game I've played it when it was all released, and I just played it start to finish. I've never actually had to go through the episode thing, because it just doesn't appeal to me.
What is the ideal wait time, Kieron, in your opinion?
2 days.
Okay.
That's a very precise number.
No,
like
it's
a month?
tough because
2 months?
Yeah, I think after a month I start to forget about the game that I played, like the episode that I played previously. It's one of those things where like I don't want to ask, or I don't want to be advocating for the developers to be working harder than they should either. And it's like, if they could release it on a shorter schedule, because right now it's like every 3 months for roughly a 3-hour episode. And like you could say, just do an hour a month or something like that. But then it's like you could end up making it worse because you wait a month, play for an hour, and then that's it. So it's like it's
actually
lesser of
two
two evils.
The Final
really.
Fantasy VII remake question: has everyone read about the the people's reaction to Barrett's voice?
Yeah.
Nope.
How do we feel about that? Do we feel in 2019 it's a bit tone deaf?
It definitely seems that way. It kind of. I don't know. I was reading a few things. I don't know. Maybe if you read the same stuff as me, Ash, but like a lot of it was about how Japanese games, especially, sort of get those stereotypes so wrong.
They do lean into them a little bit too easily.
And then like Final Fantasy VII apparently was translated into English by one guy in like 2 weeks.
Yes, correct.
So
in
it
a
doesn't
small
have a
windowless room, or
pretty much.
In a tiny room with no windows.
Barrett's character doesn't have a great history to begin with, and it feels like this was going to be a golden opportunity for them to fix that and make it better.
I mean, a lot of people are sort of throwing around the term racist, but at the same time, I think it's more rooted in just this horrible sort of cartoonish aspect to it.
It's not, it's lazy more than anything.
That's the best way of looking at it. It's like, a lot of people have said, it's like dollar store Mr. T. Which, like, even Mr. T at its core is not a good place to start from.
Exactly.
So going on a cheap version of Mr. T just makes it even worse.
Yeah. It's hopefully they hear the feedback, and like they've scrapped development of this game like 3 times already. So what's another? I'm
gonna say we've already been waiting how many years. Off the top of my head, the worst thing is that the actual person doing the voice for Barrett is an exceptionally good voice actor. So with the right direction and the right content, could actually be like a really good, interesting character. He can still have all the tropes of being sort of who he is. I mean, Barrett is.
So it's not Ronda Rousey,
but without the "I'm gonna take the weight off your shoulders."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not a good look.
Well, we'll move on to some news. Big shout out to Adam from the website who did up our State of Play write-up. It's actually very, very good. I've given it a proper read,
ladies and gentlemen,
today. And good job, mate, if you're listening. So some news. We'll start with we'll sort of breeze through these, and we'll start with Starbreeze, in fact.
Did you say you'll Starbreeze through these?
Oh, I should have, damn it.
Sure.
But yeah,
right,
so
I can fix it in editing.
if you've
start again.
If you haven't now you've thrown me. If you haven't heard or read in the last week or so, it's Starbreeze Studios, who are the publisher of Payday and the excellent Overkill's The Walking Dead, and the phenomenal PS4 classic Raid World War II,
and the actually amazing Riddick game.
Oh.
Yes, actually. I didn't even know they did that. I'm glad I found that out, because I was hanging some serious shit on them, and then I found out about that. I was like,
They also did they do, I always forget what it's called, Brothers, Tale of Two Brothers or something? Brothers, Tale of Two?
They published
it's
it,
called Two Brothers.
Yeah. And actually, while we're sort of talking about Starbreeze, but A Plague Tale, the gameplay feels a very lot like that game. Just FYI.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty good comparison.
Yeah, I meant to write it in the review, but I couldn't really fit it in. It was yeah. When I was sort of writing, I was like, oh, I want to get this in, but I don't know how to get it in and fit because I chopped and changed to sort of the gameplay parts around it. Anyway, so yeah, Starbreeze. As you may know, they have been in a bit of strife recently financially. Overkill's The Walking Dead was not the awesome game that I said it was. It was actually
the words were critical failure.
It sucked. Like it actually sucked. I was pretty keen for it when it was announced because I'm a huge Payday guy. Like love it. Payday 2, I spent hours upon hours. You know, even replaying the same missions over and over again on the PS3 with my two housemates at the time, Trent from the website. Shout out to Trent. Yeah, we had heaps and heaps of fun. And then they sort of, fucked all the console gamers over by not doing an update on PS4 for like, or even like, PS3 and PS4 for like a year, like over a year. There was no update while, the PC community were getting free DLC and new missions,
Everything.
and it's just like, can't, mate. So, and then...
Do you know what confused me about this story with the Starbreeze Studios may not last another year? Was the fact that I thought they were already closed.
Yeah, same.
Like, after I heard all the shit they went through, I'm like, those guys must be so out to pasture, it's not even funny. And then I get this update where Starbreeze Studios may not last another year, and I was like, what?
So, yeah, they did all that. So, I think a lot of console gamers were pretty pissed off with Starbreeze. And then they did the classic thing where they actually had an update. So, what did they do? They sold it back to you. You had to buy the update, pretty much. The update was so massive that they decided to repackage the game and sell you the base game, but with the update at like $80, and I bought it.
It's such a scummy thing to do.
But it was awesome.
So they've only got the lights on still because Zach bought
pretty much
their $80 game again.
And then they did the same thing again. The updates were a little bit more frequent because apparently with PS3 the updates or the patches you had to pay for. I can't remember the cost that was.
Go through certification.
It's like $10,000.
Yeah, that was So that's why they didn't. And with PC it was free. And that's apparently why they didn't sort of do any console sort of updates. But with the PS4, they were all free. Yeah, I think. So there was a few more updates, but then they did the same thing. It sort of went a bit quiet again, and there was heaps of cool missions coming on PC, and I was like, God damn it, I want to play these missions on PS4. So they sold the game back to us again, and I was like, no, I'm done. I'm just done.
Yeah.
And then they released Raid, which was basically Payday, but in World War II. So you played as these 4 dudes who would go around looting, like Hitler's stash of gold and stuff like that. Like, so instead of getting money from the bank or jewels from a robbery, you'd
going into Hitler's private room.
And that sucked majorly. I think I gave that a 4. John Cleese was even in it, and even his parts are...
Are you serious?
Yeah, he was... There's like video parts that are very like slapstick sort of comedy.
Is it a bit old Command and Conquer cutscenes?
Geez, I haven't seen those for a long time, so I don't remember. But anyway, it sucked.
So no, they're not.
And then in that time they were working on Overkill's The Walking Dead, and it was meant to be, this sort of Payday-esque game, sort of like but in the open and I forgot the Walking Dead universe made by Overkill. And after like 5 years, it was delayed like heaps of times, and it finally came out, and it sucked. It absolutely sucked hard. And
I read about some of the development on that game, and it sounded like such a ridiculous nightmare.
Yeah, and
changes of engine and all the other stuff.
And then basically the reviews it bombed hard, and then so I think they expected a massive cash injection from this game, and it just tanked massively, and it's now pulled from Steam, so the game you can't buy it on Steam anymore.
Wow,
it only came
really?
out, because Skybound, the license holder for Old Mate for The Walking Dead, they revoked the license. So they were like, mate, guys, this game sucks so bad that we don't want your name anywhere near our bloody brand
Can you
again.
please stop selling this shitty game?
When the suits recognize that the game is bad, that's when you know it's bad.
Yeah, so then all of a sudden they lost this, they lost so much money, so they sold off. I think they sold off some stuff, and they've got their VR division as well, Star VR, which they were in partnership with Acer, and I feel like they're still working with Acer, I think, or they bought them out. But anyway,
weren't they working with some massive Saudi company to make virtual reality like theme parks?
Not too sure, but yeah, basically with that VR division was tanking as well. They just have all these tanking components of their business. So, and then the CEO, or is it the CEO? He got caught up in this he basically
Conspiracy to make shitty games.
Well, they got raided by the officials and stuff like that, and
I heard about this. He got escorted out of the building, didn't he?
And it turns out it wasn't actually the business. It was nothing sort of to do with the business. I think it was insider trading, from memory.
Oh my god!
It wasn't actually the business itself that was found to be liable. It was him. Anyway, he got the boot, and now they're basically fucked. They got no money. They are relying on Payday 2 microtransactions to sort of pay the bills to keep the lights on.
Please buy hats.
And they announced Payday 3. I think was it last year or maybe the year before? But that was.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah, well, that'll still be ages away because they're still milking the bloody teat of Payday 2. So basically they're on the brink of if they can't find a Payday, they'll have to shut the doors pretty much, which is sad, I guess, because there's they have had some good games, and they got one of Kieron's most anticipated games on their books as well, publishing Psychonauts 2. So it's what happens to that if they do close the doors, because they didn't. I mean, I don't really know too much about it, but they were crowdfunded with part of it, weren't they, or was that?
Yeah, so Double Fine crowdfunded on Fig for Psychonauts 2. So I think I'm sure that they're still sort of getting the bulk of their funding for the game from that, because it was a few $1 million that they got. But yeah, so and then they brought on Starbreeze to help with the publishing side of things. So I'm pretty sure that they're mostly for marketing and sort of stuff,
but they would help with things
packaging and all that kind of thing.
Your distribution stuff and all that,
release stuff. Yeah, so I'm not super worried about Psychonauts 2 being adversely affected. Maybe delayed, or it might need to change hands if Starbreeze go under. But hopefully it's no more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that even though they've been some dicks about Payday 2 in the past, I hope they do survive and launch Payday 3, because I think they sold System Shock 3. So yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
really?
yeah, so they had to sell System Shock 3.
Yeah, they did.
To sort of bring in some funds. But yeah, no, that's hopefully. I think let's have a look here. The article says Starbreeze states in the report an liquidity shortfall is expected before mid 2019 if no additional funds are provided. So not looking good for old mates. Another thing that was in the news this week, actually last week, on the weekend, is that Labor, if elected, are going to bring back the Australian Interactive Games Fund with a $25 million money pool, which is awesome because the government doesn't support the actual federal government doesn't really support the games industry enough. So yeah, that was very, very exciting to read. And just reading here on Kotaku, it says the Australian Interactive Games Fund was short-lived, but the federal investment program played a part in backing some of the best local games and studios over the past several years. Another policy launched in Melbourne this afternoon, so that was on the weekend. Labor has announced that it will reinstate the fund to the tune of $25 million if elected. So that's very cool, because there are heaps of really talented developers and studios in Australia that could use some extra money to sort of, because one of the topics that we discussed with Mike Blackney from the maker of Dead Stake Drive was that a lot of talent that we have here can't find work, so they go overseas. So I guess something like this will help keep the talent on our shores.
Yeah, I think if you go to like, obviously we go to PAX every year. I think when you go there and you go to like the indie area and you see all the really cool stuff that Film Victoria funds, which like Dead Static Drive is one of them.
Was it Film Victoria or was it Creative? Oh, I think it's both actually. I think he got
it might be
both.
Yeah. Like there's some amazing stuff that people pump out and wouldn't be at places like PAX, even if they were even people that are self-funded without that extra grant money to market their game. Like you just see it makes such a big difference to developers in Victoria, and I think like Adelaide's, like South Australia, is fairly good at supporting their developers as well. I just like it needs to be on a federal level for sure.
I've heard Brisbane is pretty Queensland.
Yeah, Queensland's the other pretty good one. I think New South Wales is not so good from what I've heard.
New South Wales is shit with anything to do with the creative.
But yeah, I mean, I guess and something like this will help. I guess developers not avoid but not have to rely on like crowdfunding, which can, if development goes south, that can be quite a big issue to deal with. If you can't deliver your game that you've promised to people, or the people have paid for pretty much. It'll help them, and hopefully, I mean, I'm not going to get political, but hopefully we see it introduced. While we're talking about, I guess, legislation of sorts, Ash, you sort of wrote a piece, was it late last week? No, it was on the weekend on Saturday again, about the American senator who wants to introduce legislation on loot boxes, basically making them illegal.
Well, let's not paraphrase it. He wants to make pay to win illegal.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
That's the way I put it. But I mean, the truth is, yes, American senator. He's actually approaching to try and basically put in legislation that targets what he calls manipulative practices in games. With basically the entire point is, when it targets children, it's not okay.
Yeah, so this will impact, I guess, what's the big... Because I think, did it say that like games like Fortnite or something like that? Or did I...
So, I mean, generally, he didn't really point fingers.
No, I think I heard another
games,
podcast that was talking about it, sorry.
Yeah, it was the interesting thing, like, he had a lot of really good, like, I mean, the guy's called Josh Hawley, right? He's a senator, he's the youngest serving member of, like, the senator at the moment, at the age of, like, 39, which just tells you a lot about, American politics. But, he didn't actually target anything particular, but what he did is he mentioned very specifically that he would prohibit games from implementing features that prompt the player to pay cash to further the game. Now, this sounds exactly like your good old-fashioned Candy Crush tries, if you remember those old chestnuts. Yep. He also made a very clear point of saying that he would target practices that involve mechanics where players receive rewards at random for a fee, which, by any other name, is loot boxes.
Yeah, and so I was listening to the Kotaku podcast this morning, and they were talking about this. I think that's where I got confused with the Fortnite thing. But the interesting thing about this is that the guy is a Republican who are known to be supportive of like business, pretty much, So it's interesting that, he sort of wants to...
I was going to say, counterpoint, he's also a father of 2 young kids.
He's also, from what I've heard...
You can tell he's been stung by a big Apple iTunes Store bill before.
Apparently he's very anti-abortion and a bunch of other stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I actually said in my article that like he's a politician, so he's probably a scumbag in some way, but we'll find that out later. But I mean, at least the discussion's being started that there's always been this sort of nebulous air about like are games being deliberately designed to sort of try and fleece us, and like everyone's sort of like, well, yeah, but like nobody's actually come out and just said, should we do something about it?
Yeah, and that's and that's what they said like on the Kotaku thing is that the games industry itself couldn't sort of control itself, and and like regulate
the games
itself.
Industry,
and now
has self-regulated for so long. This is the end point that we've ended up at. And so I mean, even in his case, when he mentions the actual legislation, how it would work, what he points out is that generally it's going to be a case of there's going to have to be rules that would be enforced by a federal trade commission, which would treat the distribution of such games by publishers and online distributors as unfair trade practice. So basically it comes down to business practices and what is and isn't okay. And this means that actual state attorney generals for that particular state would be empowered to file suit against the particular items that are actually targeting children in a way. And like that's the big push, is that it's talking about children. And his actual document states very clearly that there are particular things that identify whether a game targets children. So I mean, it means that adults and their microtransactions can just deal with it. You're older and wiser, you should know how to spend your money, but it's that stuff where it's sort of like, you know, how many parents have you encountered that have like a kid playing Fortnite who's like, Mom, I have to buy this skin, it's only available for the next 4 hours, that kind of shit.
But yeah, I guess, I mean, the counter argument to that would be is that, you know, you can set up a PS4 profile that is restricted in that regard, so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm for or against it, really, but I think I'm more for it.
I'm for recognition that it exists. I'm for recognition that game developers do sit down and think about what's the best way of manipulating money out of people. There was a document leaked from, I think, Apple not that long ago where they talked about the concept of friendly fraud and how, like, children are happy to go and borrow their parents' credit card, and the banks don't do anything about it because it's only $3 or $4, but at the same time it is still money that's being gained not illegally, but just dishonestly.
Yeah, I think like if any good is to come out of this, like whether or not you feel like it's a matter of like parenting or, you know, whatever, I think the best thing to come out of something like this would be that hopefully people would stop designing games just purely to make money.
Yeah,
like,
I would be happy to settle for parents become aware that these things exist.
Do you think that it's a higher level decision to make these implement these sort of mechanics as opposed to,
I think,
like a
I think a lot of the time
Cory Barlog going, you know, we've got to add loot boxes into God of War 2 because, you know, I want to buy a new Porsche or whatever.
I think most, like a lot of the games that are particularly manipulative, I think they are birthed with that ethos in mind.
I think a good example of that is when, I think it was the last Deus Ex, was it Mankind Divided? Whichever the last one was.
Yeah.
And they pretty much had the game built, ready to go, and like a month or 2 weeks before release, they literally just got a call from the execs going, hey, we want microtransactions in this. So they pretty much had to break their game to adhere to what the people in suits wanted.
Do you know why that is? And I didn't know this, but... they were talking about it on the Kotaku thingy, but apparently CEOs, and it doesn't surprise me now, but they get kickbacks from microtransactions.
They absolutely do.
Yeah,
they get bonuses based off the amount of additional revenue beyond initial cost.
So yeah, it's poor old Jimmy who's slaving away on his minimum wage.
Oh yeah,
and then anyway. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens because, I mean, a lot of legislation doesn't sort of get off the floor at all. So, and it'll be interesting to see what happens because this is American legislation. This is not here. So it'll be whether, if it does go through, the whole industry adapts it, or if they go, okay, you know what, American games are patched out. You know, they patched out the microtransactions because you saw with FIFA that Belgium tried to ban loot boxes in FIFA.
Yep.
In Belgium, but it would only, so that would only affect Belgium. So, it'll be interesting to see what's happened. Jordan, you've got some tech news that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So the first one is a bit of a weird one. It's so for some of the less informed listeners, CryEngine is one of the many engines that developers use. It's used to power games like Crysis or the whole Crysis series. You know, the whole running joke, can your computer run Crysis? It's also powered Rise, Son of Rome, Homefront, Revolution.
Love that game.
It's also, it was being used to power Star Citizen. I think they're changing engines or they're doing something with it. Whatever, but yeah.
What else it powers? Sniper Ghost Warrior.
Yeah, so it's got a history of having average games tied to it, but... But yeah, so they actually just the other day announced some features that they're looking to add into CryEngine. It's via the releases of CryEngine 5.6 and 5.7. Now this won't be until like next year, but they're adding support for the APIs under DX12 and Vulkan. And so what those are basically like they're almost like the building block of a game. And so a notable user of Vulkan is Doom. It's like one of the best running games that's been made. It runs so smoothly, and the reason that those two APIs are of really good note is because they scale across multiple CPU cores really, really well, which is what made Doom run really well on the PS4 and Xbox, is because they had 8 cores in those systems. It means that their systems can be a lot more efficient in the way they process things, so it doesn't need to be as power hungry. You don't put as much heat through everything. And it just makes the game, run better, so it'll be easier for developers to work with. They've also said that they're adding in ray tracing. I believe it might be through DirectX, but it might be through some other form. I'm hoping it's not the NVIDIA ray tracing, because that sucks. But yeah, so with that, it's really good to see that they're trying to bring that in. It's a bit late though, because let's be real, a bunch of other engines support all those things. So
yeah, I was gonna say, do you think there's any life left in CryEngine to begin with?
There is, for sure. It's still a pretty good engine. It's just they really need to get out of the old mindset of CryEngine, because the way CryEngine was originally built, and this is where the whole joke for can your computer run Crysis thing is, CryEngine was originally built for a future that never came. It was originally built for CPUs to eventually go to like 5, 6, 7, 8 gigahertz, and that is, we're nowhere near that. So the good thing about CryEngine, even though it's a bit late, adopting these other APIs, is it shows that they're getting away from relying on clock speeds and rather relying on what the industry is doing and not what it might do.
It is quite a user-friendly engine too, isn't it? Because I see a lot of like fan games and mods and stuff made using CryEngine. So that's kind of exciting for
I've
them.
downloaded
Those kind of
and
yeah. I was gonna say there's
fucking confusing.
I was gonna say, like for the modding community and stuff, like having access to those APIs and to like potentially ray tracing is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really good.
It only serves to benefit.
If you do get like if this is anybody listening, if you do get like 5-10 minutes spare while you're on the tram to work, or flushing out that morning coffee,
don't listen to this podcast.
There's a very, very interesting article on Sevet Yearly, or whatever, the guy from Crytek, one of the founders of Crytek, and how they sort of built like CryEngine initially, and it's a super interesting story. Just thought I'd share that.
Well, yeah, actually, we can actually attribute a lot of all these modern features in games thanks to CryEngine and Crysis, believe it or not.
What's the thing? This is I can't remember that, but there's a thing that CryEngine doesn't do or can't do. There's like a major thing.
It might be one of the forms of anti-aliasing. Because I know in terms of anti-aliasing, CryEngine was very limited, but they worked around it with the first Crysis by kind of like blending the edges of foliage so it wouldn't look so blocky.
Yeah. Anyway, I can't quite remember, but there's something that I remember that CryEngine doesn't do or something, and that's the reason why they couldn't do a feature of it. And the other thing was the AMD or something you wanted to share.
There's been a rumor of the 3rd generation of Ryzen CPUs. There's been a rumor that the very top end with a new line called Ryzen 9. Previously, it's gone Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7. So they might be going into Ryzen 9 with a 3850X CPU, which has 16 cores and 32 threads. Now, that's a lot of cores, and it makes sense if anyone watched the keynote from CES earlier this year. You would have seen that they showed the actual die for the CPU, and it barely used any room. So it makes sense if this happened, but the fact that they might be doing this shows that their lower line still might be really, really efficient and powerful, which is great news for people, well, for the next generation of consoles, because If the Xbox is following in any form of same footsteps as the PS5, it'll be using the Zen 2 architecture, which is what these CPUs are using. So it means that you might be able to squeeze even more than previously thought out of such a small system.
Well, they confirmed that the Zen 2, whatever processor the PS5 is using, is eight cores?
Yeah, custom 8-core CPU. I'd be interested to see if they're going down the whole kind of like APU route where the CPU and the GPU are on the same thing, or if they're actually separating them this time. I hope they're separating them, but sometimes yeah, pretty much.
And the last bit of news that we had, just to quickly talk about, is that the new Mortal Kombat film is being made in in South Australia, of all places.
South Australia. Yeah, because apparently we haven't spoken about Mortal Kombat enough in this podcast. Very straightforward. Sort of came out of nowhere, but yeah. Apparently, the production is expected to create 580 jobs and see 70 million Australian dollars get poured into the local economy of South Australia. So, yeah, and apparently it's confirmed to be a reboot. I mean, the last I heard was Ed Boon said that a script existed and that if it was in the right hands, it would be great, and if it's in the wrong hands, it would be terrible. But, yeah, apparently it's being made in South Australia and it's being directed by Simon McQuoid, who is known for making Australian commercials.
Where the
So,
bloody liar.
which is your favourite Aussie ad, guys? Because I hope it was him.
I hope that means that Clive Palmer's going to feature in
He should
the
be
Mortal Kombat film.
He should be.
Clive Palmer will be Lord Raiden. And he'll just rant on about the Chinese conspiracy to take over Australia through Mortal Kombat.
While we're on the topic of movies, we might sort of wrap up with a bit of general chat just about some movies that are coming out or have recently came out, because there's a couple that are on my radar. But has anybody seen Detective Pikachu?
Yeah.
Yeah, how was it?
It was good. It was
It's good.
as far as video game to movie adaptations go, it's probably the best example that I've seen.
Really?
It's still very
Sonic?
low.
It's a
Still a very low benchmark to hit, but it's a good trophy to take home.
Like honestly, like the storyline, like it's a bit ho hum. It's there for fun. It's not serious. It doesn't take itself seriously at all. I
was going to say the most critical piece of I guess criticism I've heard about it is that it wraps up super cleanly, almost to the point where it actually feels like a kid's movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's Pokemon, dude.
Yeah. But like honestly, all it needed to do was like give me an hour and a half of really cool CG Pokemon interacting with people, and it does that. So
Cool.
Done, easy.
Would you kiss Mr. Mime?
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
I'd kiss Ludicolo.
After seeing after seeing the moves he's capable of, I'm there.
Sounds
This got weird.
awful. The other movies.
This podcast is called "Which Mr. Mime Would You Kiss?"
The film that I'm most looking forward to is coming out this week on Thursday. John Wick 3. Anybody else keen to see that?
I'm really keen to actually get around to watching John Wick 2.
Oh, I think you should just
Gotta do
leave.
it.
You
I
are.
looked effective on the ad for 3.
Okay, I'll leave him
missed
faster
that.
then. I have not watched any John Wick.
Okay, you can also leave. And you
Yeah,
can't rejoin the podcast until you've watched all of John Wick.
Does that mean I get out of editing it too?
Damn it! All right, you can stay.
But guys, the big boys that are coming out to play, we've got another Godzilla movie coming out.
Is that soon?
Yeah, that's May 28th, I think. Yeah, I'm
last
super
one was so
keen,
good.
but no one wants to go see it with me.
I will see it
look,
with you. I think it looks
look,
absurd.
If
We'll
you
all-
pay for my flight down to Melbourne, I'll go see it with
No,
you.
we'll just
Sorry,
do it
you're
on,
too
we'll just
busy
do it on
editing
Discord
podcast.
and we'll make it the podcast.
But just jumping back, just very before we start talking about
Podzilla.
Godzilla, John Wick 3 is currently on 98% on Rotten Tomatoes from 47 reviews, and my
That's
Wow,
not
really?
enough.
For a massively action-driven
My jaw
flick, it's actually getting
cannot
that
be
high
any
rating.
tighter. Quick little story here. You might find this a little bit humorous. Is when John Wick 2 came out, because remember how it was banned in Australia? Not banned, sorry. It was delayed in Australia for months. Do you remember that?
I do
No,
now.
I don't remember
Okay.
that. I haven't
So,
seen John Wick 2.
Oh,
You
of
could be
course
making
don't.
that up and we wouldn't know.
Anyway, so yeah, because I was in Munich at the time, and John Wick 3 had just come out like a week earlier, and I remember reading that Australia wasn't going to get it till like
He means John
May.
Wick 2.
Oh yeah, sorry, I said John Wick 3. Yeah, so John Wick 2. So I was like, oh, let's go see it, and my girlfriend was like, oh, won't it be in like German or something? And I was like, I don't know, it'll be worth it. So I like went to this film expecting it to be in full German, like with like German like voiceovers, but thankfully it was actually in full English. So yeah,
Did it have German subtitles?
no, it was full English,
Interesting.
and I was very surprised there was like no German voiceovers or no German subtitles. So
I think it's a pretty self-explanatory film.
yeah, but I was quite surprised. But yeah, Godzilla. Oh, I am very keen to see that. And
It looks absurd in all the right ways.
the early reviews have actually been pretty good, from what I've read. Everyone,
I think for me, just the baseline is: do giant monsters fight? If yes, film good. Like, I mean, I'm a simple man.
the reason
So
why
what are your thoughts on monsters versus aliens?
Super keen is one of my favorite actors is in that film.
John Cleese.
No, not John Cleese.
John Goodman.
John Wick?
No, I can't think.
Clive Palmer.
He is Godzilla. Palmzilla. Now of course, yeah, Kyle Chandler. He's one of my favorite actors.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I think he's a
unsung hero.
and he's in that. So I'm keen. Sorry, 29th of May it comes out. I think I said the
That's this
Well,
month.
what day is that?
for
Thursday.
Wednesday.
Films come out on
Wednesday. So
Thursday.
it must be the 30th here. The date I'm looking at must be. the
Okay,
date.
cool. See, I won't be editing the podcast. It'll have already been done.
Damn it. But no, I'm keen. I'm keen to see Mothra as well. Just fuck some shit up. Yeah. Very cool. Are you
Very
gonna?
nice.
When are you gonna go see it, Kieran? Let's make a date.
We'll go see John Wick.
Huh?
We'll go see John Wick.
Sorry, I've already made plans for that. Sorry.
Go
Yeah.
see the John Wick
Don't
Godzilla
tell me,
crossover movie.
don't do this to me publicly.
I know it's even worse. 'Cause
Well, to be fair, Kira, you just heard him making plans with me, so I mean, you're more than welcome to come.
that's for Godzilla.
No, it's for both.
Yeah, make the plans live on the podcast. Write down to telling people which seats you're in.
Soz like that. I didn't mean to break your heart like that. But Godzilla, we should definitely, if you're interested, if you want to.
Nah, I'm busy.
I expect the next podcast.
He's busy editing the podcast.
Godzilla and nothing else.
Episode 3, Podzilla. I mean, Zach will fight.
Godzilla.
That's very good.
I think you've just written the title for episode 3.
Yeah, I think
It's done. That's it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else coming out. Oh, actually, TV shows. Who likes TV shows? Everyone likes TV shows. There's a very cool Danish TV show, season 2, coming out this Friday called The Rain. I'm not sure if any of you guys watched it on Netflix.
I don't watch a lot of Danish TV.
Well,
Yeah, I have Australian Netflix.
I can't. It's on Australian Netflix, mate.
It's on Australia's version of Danish Netflix.
But okay, so I'm going to take that as no one else has seen it.
No.
Has anybody else actually ever heard of it?
No.
Well, okay.
Outside of just now, no.
So quick breakdown. It's sort of like, if you had to say anything what it's like The Walking Dead. So
You've lost me.
it's
Nice.
like the rain comes and the rain's got something in it and it's basically fucks people up. A family goes to this shelter. Like the dad and the.
Where's it set? Is it set?
It's in Denmark. I'm pretty sure it's
Okay.
Danish, or is it Norwegian? I think it's Danish. But no, yeah, it's because I was like, oh, I got like nothing to watch tonight. I just whacked it on, and I thought it was great. So I binged the whole season, and no, I'm keen. I'm keen for season 2. So if you haven't watched the Rain, you should watch it.
If you're keen on Danish zombie media, the rain.
Well, no, there's no zombies.
You said it was like The Walking
Yeah,
Dead.
no, okay. In the sense that that like shit.
In the sense that it's a TV
I
serial.
I feel
Are there
lied
shuffling
to.
undead
No,
figures
so
that are
okay,
not known
sorry.
as zombies?
It's Walking Dead in the sense that something happens to the world and it's about a group of people trying to survive in that world.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The rain kills you. I think it just kills you. Yeah.
Is it only happening in Denmark, or
No, the world, I believe.
are there some continents where like they fixed it? Like, did they bless the rains down in Africa?
Fuck you.
I was waiting
Yeah, that's
for
it.
that.
Podcast is over. Everyone go home. We've peaked.
Yeah. And if you do watch it in Danish voiceovers with English subs, because the English voiceovers are terrible. But yeah, that's all from me. That's probably all from us. I'm not sure if you have any parting words to our
Trousers.
All right, Jordan,
Jorts.
Kieran.
No, I'm good.
Cool.
I'm out.
Sweet. Oh, thank you for listening to episode 2. Hopefully you stick around for episode 3 after this great chat, and hopefully Kieran can forgive me for the lack of the John Wick 3 date.
Yeah,
Words.
it's been nice. I've enjoyed my final episode here on the podcast. So
Well, next week we can just talk about Homefront and Troll and I. Oh, we can go for hours. All right. Thank you for listening, and have a good evening, morning, afternoon, lunch, bath, whatever you're doing. And see you next week.
Please listen to us in the bath.